Welcome to Sino-Warfare with Ralph D. Sawyer. Not just in the West, but also in Asia, Sunzi's Art of War has become one of the most overexposed and trivialized books ever written. Dozens of translations of varying quality have been made into every language. These include scholarly tomes, such as this Japanese edition, and popular Chinese and Japanese versions for contemporary readers. Another Japanese version. Typical Chinese version. There have, of course, been a couple of dozen English translations, and there are also anime versions of varying quality, including this justly famous one, which initiated the tradition, and a 6-volume version which followed. Voluminous commentaries have also appeared over the ages, and some of them are summarized in this modern 600-page compendium of Xunzi passages and analysis. There are also novels, such as this one in Chinese and the Japanese translation, in this case, and videos. And here are 3. And here he's called the Bingfa, and a 22-part TV serialization. Innumerable books and articles on applying the art of war's principles to everything have been penned, ranging from business and the stock market, a couple of Japanese versions, Chinese version for the stock market, a couple of well-known English versions. There are also books on romance, marital relations, and sports competition, including golf. There are as many interpretations as imaginative readers. No shortage of sayings attributed to Xunzi that don't appear in the Chinese text at all. At the same time, it should be remembered that the Art of War is widely acclaimed as one of the 5 most important books in Chinese culture, and is generally considered one of the world's great works. It continues to affect contemporary thought throughout Asia, but especially China, where it's the acknowledged foundation of its military science and the subject of both historical and theoretical interest, as the PRC formulates military science with unique Chinese characteristics. Numerous aphorisms, such as "know the enemy and know yourself and you'll never be defeated," have entered the language and continue to be influential. 3 seemingly simple questions might be asked. Who was Xunzi? What's the nature of the book? Was Xunzi the author? By 500 BC, the numerous states founded at Zhou's inception in 1045 had essentially become independent political entities. By the mid-6th century BC, their rivalry had already resulted in armed conflict. However, Wu's dismal battlefield performance compelled the new ruler, King Helü, to employ several foreign advisors, including Xunzi. Open field warfare didn't truly begin to escalate until the spring and autumn period. At this time, operational forces started growing in size and lethality. Armies of perhaps 20,000 were being fielded just before 512 BC, the date Xunzi first appears in Wu. Chariots routinely numbered 500 or more. Campaigns were beginning to take weeks instead of days, and cities were emerging as critical targets for siege warfare. Even more important, as the Battle of Hong River in 638 BC had shown, the old ritual attitudes and beliefs in uprightness and benevolence, which had constrained battlefield performance to some extent, had largely lost their credence. At that clash, the Duke of Sung rejected calls to attack Chu's significantly larger forces while they were fording the river, and again before they had fully formed up on the bank. He therefore suffered a total defeat. As a result, no state could afford to be unprepared or ignorant of current tactical practices. Furthermore, multi-party warfare was a distinct possibility, as was the danger an enemy, or even a friend, might take advantage of the army being entangled outside the border, or a state having suffered a devastating defeat and launch an attack. In this situation, victory could prove just as debilitating as defeat. Was there a historical Xunzi? His authorship of The Art of War and his achievements are an integral part of Chinese military lore. But his name isn't even mentioned in the period's massive chronicle, the Tso-chuan, nor in any of the other historical works that record spring and autumn events. His lack of visibility has prompted suggestions that he never existed and that someone else wrote the book. Xunzi's reputation derives almost solely from his biography in China's first synthetic history, the Great Shiji, written around 100 BC. As recounted there, Xunzi managed to obtain an audience with King Helü of Wu, who had recently usurped the throne by having his uncle assassinated. At the interview, he presented a 13-chapter work on strategy and discussed his theories at length, only to have the king ask whether he could demonstrate the fundamentals of military discipline, something he had said was critical to battlefield success. Accepting the challenge, Xunzi audaciously suggested he organize the court women into two companies, then demonstrate how they could become capable of maneuvering and responding. After deliberately appointing two of the king's concubines as commanders, he instructed them in the basics several times, and he explained the penalties for failing to comply. However, when he issued an actual order, the women only laughed, as we would expect. He then reissued the instructions, followed by the commands, with the same result, and a third time. At that point, he brazenly ordered the two leaders beheaded for having failed to obey orders. Naturally, the distraught king tried to intercede, but Xunzi obstinately claimed that a commander in the field isn't required to obey mandates from the ruler. In an astonishing development, a court official actually inflicted the punishment, after which the remaining women immediately responded to every instruction. I wonder why. Rather than having Xunzi torn limb from limb, a depressed king indicated he had no further interest in his tactics. However, Wu Zishu, another advisor, pointed out the king had long wanted to employ the army, and he could now do so. Despite the episode's apocryphal nature, King Helü's own entry in the Shiji summarily states, "At this time, the state of Wu, employing the plans of Wu Zishu, Sun-wu, and Bo-pi, destroyed the strong state of Chu in the west, overawed Jin in the north, and attacked Yue in the south." The only Warring States writings that apparently refer to Xunzi are found in the 3rd century. In the Xunzi, the fictional lord of Lin Wu, who well understands the text, says, "What the military esteems is seizing advantage. What it practices is change and deception. One who excels at employing the military responds precipitously, distantly, and darkly. No one knows from where he goes forth. When Sun-wu employed them, he had no enemies under heaven." Even the political thinker Han Feizi noted that every family has Sun-wu's book stored away. These passages would seem to substantiate his existence. However, other interpretations have been offered in rebuttal. Furthermore, having been written 2.5 centuries later, the Sun-wu persona may have been fabricated in the interim. When it comes to the text itself, in Chinese, the Art of War is called Sunzi Bingfa. Sun being his surname, Tzu, an honorific that connotes master, just as Confucius is Kongzi, Master Kong. Bing has several martial meanings, including soldier, weapon, even army, while Fa, it basically means method, rule, or law. So military method or tactics is now distinguished from Bing Le, which has more of the sense of strategy, though no such distinction existed when Xunzi was writing. But the title has long been conventionally translated as The Art of War. Some historians have claimed the concepts are too sophisticated, the scope and the practice of warfare too extensive and advanced, the emphasis upon speed too great, The commander's independence, impossible, and a 100,000-man force far too large for Xunzi's era. Others have argued that ritual no longer governed warfare. Operational groups exceeding 30,000 were already known, chariot warfare was fervent, and professionalism was necessary to survive on the battlefield. They further claim that Xunzi was an innovative thinker, someone stimulated rather than constrained by contemporary experience. In addition, any text that had to be transmitted for 350 years before assuming its current form must have been updated in response to contextual developments. Taking into account the evolving nature of warfare, the rising need for military and bureaucratic specialization, the personalities involved, the complexity of the politics, the fragility of the recorded materials, and the laconic nature of writing on bamboo strips, I tend to think someone who came to refer to as Sun-tzu served as a strategist in Wu and composed the core of the book that bears his name. Thereafter, the teachings were probably transmitted within the Sun family or a close-knit school of disciples. The book would have been edited and revised in response to warfare's evolution, possibly updated by his famous descendant, Sun Bin. But if not, we can let others argue interminably and simply assume that someone whom we can call Xunzi composed the core text and refer to the mysterious author in this manner. In accord with the belief of Chinese commanders and military thinkers over the past 23 centuries, I'll be treating the art of war strictly as a military work. We'll therefore be emphasizing what the text actually says, rather than drifting off into imaginative and esoteric interpretations. After that, you can interpret it for yourself. However, for further discussion, you can consult the detailed introduction and notes found in my much pirated single-volume edition of The Art of War. It's been academically well-reviewed both here and in China, including by Junshi, the official journal of the PLA's Academy of Military Science, and the seminal journal Early China and China Review International, among many. More limited but general commentary can also be found in my complete Art of War, which includes the text of Sun Bin's military methods as well. And of course, a complete translation appears in my 7 military classics of ancient China, though without the extensive introduction. There's even a stripped-down version for those who just want to read the text itself. And translations are available into Spanish, Italian, and many other languages. Next time, I hope you will join me for Bamboo and the Greatest Affair, when we will examine the book's nature and ponder its defining vision before jumping into the strategic concepts and the tactical doctrine. But if you prefer to have a sense of spring and autumn warfare first, and I do recommend this, you can watch the first 3 talks on the era's battles. Meanwhile, thank you for watching.